$1,000 a hold, and they were known to make millions and millions when there wasn't no high taxes, and they were not hindered by white America. They were allowed to see the white America is complete and close all the doors on me. I'm not allowed to work in America, out of America. I was stopped right in my prime just when I started making money. So you can't compare me with nobody like Joe Lewis or nobody.
And if you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is worked to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
That other kind of socialism that revolutionizes the workplace, brings democracy to the workplace for the first time.
So that's one way. And then the other thing is, in my more optimistic days, he's such a perfect endpoint of everything that is toxic and dysfunctional about the United States, about capitalism, about the 80s, that maybe this is the final sort of disgusting burst before we evolve or change to something better.
Talk about some things about why we need a new party. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of do this. Why do we need a new party? We need a new party because both parties suck,
What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radical Democracy Show. I'm your host, Kamali Rose, and we are live tonight for the second and final presidential debate. Should have been the third debate, but as we know, Trump pulled out of the original second debate, and what we got instead was two dueling town halls. We did live coverage of that. If you'd like to check out our live coverage of that, check out our past videos, and you will see it there. I want to say to everyone who's here with us now, if you haven't done so already, please immediately hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and also share this out. That's the biggest thing that we need to ask for right now, is just make sure you share this out on social media. It's really important. It's the only way that the stream is going to get seen by more people. You'll help the channel to grow. So it's the one small favor that we do ask tonight. And then if you can afford it, and only if you can afford it, we do ask that you please support the show. We are independent media. We are completely funded by individuals like yourself. And so if you can afford to, for as low as $1 a month, please head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/radical democracy. There are links in the description box below. At the bottom of the description box, you'll see a link to our Patreon. You can also drop us a one-time tip at coffee.com/radical democracy. That's ko-fi.com/radical democracy. Again, links are in the description box below. So please, 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 if you can afford to do so, we really need your support. We are independent media. We survive on grassroots funding from folks like you, and we need your support. So please do so. All right. Well, we have a lot to get to tonight. We are going to be watching the final show off between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Of course, they are not the only two candidates in the race. In fact, they are not. Neither of them are the candidate that I personally voted for, but I don't want to. I'm going to lose like, 2 viewers at least right off of that. But we have another candidate in this race. Howie Hawkins as well and Angela Walker are running as the Green Party candidates. Unfortunately, they will not be allowed to debate tonight. I do believe that if you get on the majority of ballots you should be allowed in these debates. I think that should be the only threshold that anyone has to cross. And since the Green Party is on the ballot in the majority of states, they should have a chance. The people should get to hear their views. And since they won't be showing anything, since Howie Hawkins will not get a chance to speak in this debate, what I will be doing pre-debate is we're going to watch some clips of a recent speech from Howie Hawkins. This is actually thanks to our Patreon community, our Discord community. In fact, we had a few of our users in there, Brian and Connie V from the channel here, were chatting in the Discord about the Green Party and Howie Hawkins, and mentioned that they would look forward to hearing some clips from Howie Hawkins, and so and that they had never heard them speak before, and that a lot of people haven't heard Howie Hawkins even speak at this point. And I realized that we had done a disservice on this show, not having shown you anything up until now. So we're gonna correct that mistake and show you some clips of Howie Hawkins tonight. I think it'll stand as a great contrast to what we're going to see during the debates. And so if these debates go anything like the prior debates and, the debate in town halls, then I unfortunately suspect a substance-free debate, unfortunately, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But, I hope they prove me wrong. I really hope they prove me wrong. We'll see. So something unique about tonight's debate. And we will have a guest host on with us tonight. Kwame Norville from Raised Fist Media will be joining me shortly to discuss, he's going to be guest hosting with me here today. So we're going to, please check out Kwame at Raised Fist Media on YouTube and at Raised Fist Media on Twitter, and you can find him there. And we also are working on some projects over there as well. But he's working on a lot of stuff over there. So he's in the comments for tonight's coverage. We will try not to interrupt the debate so much. So unfortunately, it's 90 minutes. The debates start at 9 p.m. and they will go until 10:30. It's 90 minutes, no breaks, no commercial breaks. So there are 6 15-minute segments, and they're 6 different 15-minute segments. The topics for the 6 different segments are: first topic is fighting COVID-19. American families is the second topic. Third topic is race in America. And so let me just say, on American families, very vague topic. I think that's going to be some discussion about the economy based on what the rest of the topics are. I don't think that there's much room for discussion about the economy in any of these other topics. So I believe that American families will focus in on the economy. But so we have fighting COVID-19, American families, race in America, climate change, national security, and leadership. So those are the 6 different topics that will be discussed and debated tonight. Unfortunately, again, the debate will only be between Trump and Biden. Howie Hawkins won't get to speak, but we will bring some clips and hear some of Howie Hawkins' views on those very topics. So, all right. Just a reminder, the election is in 12 days. So we are 12 days away from election day. And so things are getting right down to we're getting right down into the thick of it. I can't believe the election's 12 days away. Maybe we'll if we have some time, we'll check out some polling before the debate starts. And as I said, we're going to be watching the C-SPAN stream. So we're going to be watching the C-SPAN stream on YouTube. And again, we'll try our best to not cut in during. So we'll have some coverage after the debate. We'll do some discussion, analysis. We'll take comments. We'll be in the chat. We'll be over in the chat during the debate. So we'll be in the chat during the debate. But we'll try not to interrupt so that you can get the full effect of things until, again, because there's no commercial breaks, there's really not an easy place to cut in. If we see any spots that we can jump in and there's any sort of slow spots, we'll jump in and we'll talk for a bit. But for the most part, we're going to just turn it on and let it run and let it play out until the end. And then we'll do all of our commentary at the end. So, all right. Let's get Kwame on here first. And I'm thinking about how to do this. We got all the clips from Howie Hawkins. You know what? I'm going to bring Kwame on, bring our guest host on first, and then we'll present these clips of Howie Hawkins, and then we'll get to the debate. So we got about 20 minutes until the debate starts. Again, the debate starts at 9 p.m. Eastern, so we're about 22 minutes out from that. So I've got about 10 minutes of actual clips to play, and then we'll have an extra 10 minutes to play around with chat. Please leave your thoughts in the comments and, over in the comments there, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. We'll try to get to some comments, but, if we'll try to get to all your comments, some of the comments before the debate starts, and then anything that we can't get to, we'll get to it after the debate ends. So stick around. Throughout, we'll chat with you in the comments, and then we'll chat with you live afterward. All right. So with no further ado, let me bring in, as soon as I get a thumbs up from my guest host, Kwame, I will bring him on. So just waiting to see that he's ready to go, and then we'll bring him in. But all right. Okay. We're ready to go. All right. So we're going to hear, with no further ado, we got Kwame Norville from Raised Fist Media, y'all. Oh, all right. What is up? I think I still got you muted. Sorry. All right, there we go. What is up, brother? How's it going?
What's up, y'all? How's it going? Glad to be here.
Nice. Appreciate you being here with us tonight. So I hope that you heard all that. I think, we're going to be jumping into some clips from Howie Hawkins before the debate starts up. So I want to get to a few clips from Howie Hawkins, a recent speech of his that I had watched. And, again, for anyone that doesn't know, Kwame joins us here from Raised Fist Media, where he works on, it's a left, it's, popular media coverage from a left-wing analysis. So of just movies, games, the tech industry, just media at large. And he covers that all from a left-wing analysis. So glad to have Kwame on with us today. We have a nice left-wing perspective here for you this evening. So I hope that you will enjoy that. We do not hide the ball about our biases. We are definitely of the left. But everyone is welcome here, right, left, everywhere in between. You are welcome here to join us. Hope you'll join us, have some useful debate. I'm hearing already in my ear. I think okay. All right. Sorry. So I have the debate running. And it looks like they're just starting with the just some of the pregame stuff at the debate. So they just started up the coverage. I had that on, so it just popped into my ear there. All right, so let's get to this Howie Hawkins clips. The first clip that we're going to listen to is Howie Hawkins talking about, and again, I just want you to think about this as we go through these clips. I want you to think about this how this compares to what we've already heard out of some of the candidates on these issues and what we're going to hear tonight from these candidates on these issues. So first up is Howie Hawkins on the topic of systemic racism and how to deal with systemic racism. And again, I'm just showing some short clips. This isn't in his whole platform, but I just plucked out a few clips from a recent speech that he gave in Albany, New York. So this is, again, Howie Hawkins on how to deal with systemic racism. And if you remember recently, the candidates were asked this. Trump said, stand back and stand by to the Proud Boys, to the white supremacists. That was Trump's response to how to deal with systemic racism. And Mike Pence was recently asked this. He said that systemic racism doesn't exist, of course. At least Joe Biden acknowledges that systemic racism exists. But, his responses to what he would do about that, that's what I want you to compare to Howie Hawkins here. So let's take a listen. And then we will come back and discuss. And Kwame, I just you can mute yourself during these things for me if you don't mind, and I'll come back and yeah, we'll pick up after. All right.
Also, to deal with this question of systemic racism in the war on drugs. Make marijuana legal, taxed, and regulated like we do tobacco and alcohol, which are more dangerous. And then the hard drugs, decriminalize them like Portugal did. So instead of a criminal charge, if you possess one of these illicit drugs, you get an appearance ticket and you go before a doctor, a social worker, and a lawyer. And they look at your situation and see how they could help. Do you need drug treatment? Do you need counseling because you're using drugs to cope with another problem? Do you need a job to stabilize your life? And since they started this in 2001 in Portugal, overdose deaths have disappeared. HIV is not spreading. There's not any drug-related street crime. And actually less people use those hard drugs, which is really important now because we got an opioid epidemic. It's killing too many people. People who might have got hooked because they've got painkillers, opioid painkillers from the doctor, they get addicted and they got to go on the street, get heroin. A lot of it laced with fentanyl. They don't want to let anybody know because it might be a criminal charge, and they end up dying. And this is not, and of course, the drug companies have been pushing the opioids. They should be prosecuted. So drug decriminalization, community control of the police, and then defunding the police. Okay, fine. If 80% of what they're doing is things they shouldn't be doing, should be done by other agencies. Okay, put that money there. But there's not enough money there. You could take the whole police department. You're not going to house the homeless, treat the addicted, or deal with all these other social problems. We need a federal program to rebuild these racially oppressed communities that have been segregated, discriminated, and exploited for generations. These would be multi-trillion dollars over multi-years. And you're not hearing anything like that from the Democrats or Republicans. And so
all right, so that was Howie Hawkins on the issue of systemic racism, and he just comes now. You got to get over you got to get past his accent there. You just look past the accent. He's got a bit of a funny accent. He's not a terribly charismatic guy. He's kind of like your Bernie Sanders style kind of politician in a way of like, he's just about the issues, right? He's all about the issues. He's not going to be, packing this punch with all, just a whole bag of charisma or anything like that. But he's right to the issues, right? And so on the issue of systemic racism, he gets he said, end the war on drugs right out of the gate, end the war on drugs, he says. And that doesn't just mean legalizing cannabis, he said, but also decriminalizing all hard drugs, all recreational drugs, just like they did in Portugal. He references Portugal, which I do time and time again whenever I talk about the issue of drug legalization, drug decriminalization. Portugal is an amazing reference. They decriminalized drugs. They went from having one of the highest overdose rates in all of Europe to having one of the lowest overdose rates. They pretty much got rid of the problem not overnight, but in a short period of time by decriminalizing and destigmatizing drug use. And so he talked about, treating it with, when people have a drug problem, instead of going in front of the court system, they would go in front of a lawyer, a social worker, and a medical professional. Do you need treatment? Do you need medical treatment? Do you need counseling? Do you need a job to try to help you get out of the situation where you feel the need to use that. And if they just want to use it, which people should be allowed to do, then just give them a safe way to use it, or just decriminalize it so that you're not being locked up and exacerbating the federal the mass incarceration issue. And then finally, he also just hits defund the police. Like, you never hear those words. You will not hear the words defund the police tonight. You will only from Donald Trump accusing Joe Biden of being in favor of defunding the police, even though, and then Joe Biden will reassure you. I'll tell you, hear me now, quote me later. Joe Biden, this will come up during the segment on race in America. That's when they'll talk about crime in America. It won't be in the American families, because apparently American families don't suffer from issues of crime. No, it's just black people, apparently. So they'll only talk about the criminal justice issue in the context of race in America. It pisses me off every time, but that's what it is. And he said, reinvest funding. And he said, you're not going to get enough from just reinvesting the funding from police. You need to add to that and supplement that with federal funding as well, that can be used for social programs, for drug treatment, mental health counseling, and we'll get to his views on housing soon, so that we're not using the police, he said, for things that they're not, that they shouldn't be responsible for. Any thoughts on that, Kwame, before we go to the next clip?
I completely agree with everything you said, especially on the decriminalizing and legalizing of drugs. I agree with what Howie said. And I agree with your guess, because good Lord, my candidate of choice is the Joe Biden, the way that Trump and the right describes Joe Biden.
Yes.
If I could have that candidate,
give me the Joe Biden that they claim that Trump will claim exists tonight. Like, give me that Joe Biden, please.
Fuck me up with that socialist Joe Biden fan, please.
I wish. Yo. All right, let's get to this next clip, because we're going to try to fly through all these, and then we can do discussion about them all at the end with whatever time we have left. Next clip is going to be Howie Hawkins talking about on the issue of climate change and a ban on fracking and a Green New Deal. All right. And mind you, the Green Party, as he'll mention here, I believe, is responsible for creating the Green New Deal. They were the originators of a Green New Deal. In fact, Jill Stein had that language in her 2016 platform. And I believe this clip includes him talking about that. So just compare this to Joe Biden's town hall response to the Pennsylvania voter who asked him, do you support, a ban on fracking? What will you do about fracking in her state, where it's causing massive issues to the environment? And Joe Biden comes right out of the gate and he's like, I just want to say right off the top, I will not support a ban on fracking. I will not ban fracking. So compare this to Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee, who the climate, who the what are they called? The Sunrise Movement is currently endorsed. So the Sunrise Movement endorsed Joe Biden over Howie Hawkins. All right. Just keep that in mind. The Sunrise Movement endorsed Joe Biden over Howie Hawkins. Look at Howie Hawkins talk on the climate change for literally 2 minutes here. This is 2 minutes of Howie Hawkins here.
And of course, Donald Trump calls climate change a hoax, but Biden acts as if it's a hoax. His climate policy is terrible. He doesn't say it in so many words, but he wants to frack the hell out of the country. So we have natural gas fired power plants. And then he says, but we're going to do carbon capture and sequestration. No, they're not. It's not economical. The only way they'll do that is if they're subsidized by the federal government, by you and me. And then he's pro-nuclear. For the first time in 50 years, the Democratic Party is saying we need more nuclear power plants. Well, we already saw that under the Biden-Obama administration. They provided loan guarantees to 6 nukes in South Carolina and Georgia. And already 4 of those nukes have been abandoned for cost overruns and construction delays. And there are 2 in Vogel, Georgia, they're still pouring money into, but that's only because Brian Kemp, as Secretary of State, suppressed the black vote, stole the election, and got elected instead of Stacey Abrams. And he's the Republican from Georgia Power and the Southern company that owns Georgia Power. So they're squeezing Georgia ratepayers to build nukes. And nukes cost 2 or 3 times more than most forms of solar and wind power. So why the hell would you do that? So the Green New Deal has been the signature issue of the Green Party for the last decade, the 2010s. We ran on it here in New York in 2010. Our presidential candidate, Jill Stein, ran on it in 2012 and 2016, a Green New Deal for America. And then after the 2018 midterms, the Sunrise Movement and AOC sat in Pelosi's office. Then the media paid attention. It went viral. Well, great. The problem is the Democrats took the slogan and diluted the content. They eliminated the ban on fracking and new fossil fuel infrastructure, which is the first thing we got to do. Because if we don't stop that, we're going to be locked into decades more fossil fuel burning, and the planet is cooked. And
all right, so there is Howie Hawkins on climate change. You can see he just hits on the fracking ban. He's like, banning fracking is the first thing that we would need to do, if we were serious about the climate change issue. And you've already had the Democratic nominee say, he will not ban fracking, and you got the Sunrise Movement backing him, even though he doesn't support the policies. He doesn't support the policies that they claim to say are necessary for, any real change to happen, and any substantive change to happen. So you got any thoughts on that before we go to the next clip? And I love his comment that Trump says it's a hoax, but Biden acts like it's a hoax because of the way that he treats it with policy. The Democratic Party doesn't act serious about climate change, and many of them are funded by the fossil fuel industry.
I completely agree. I love that he pointed out how they took the message and they diluted it down. I am increasingly feeling like the Democratic Party is where good ideas go to die. The Republicans won't even entertain them, but the Democrats will take the name and take all of the substance out of it and give us a slogan without change, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Yo, it reminds me of the clip from American Gangster where Denzel's up in there and he's like, and Jay-Z cut it up for a song too, where he's like, he's talking to Cuba Gooding Jr., I think, in the club or whatever. And he's like, this is my brand, Blue Magic is a brand. And he's like, these people don't know me any better than they know the chairman of, or the CEO of General Mills. But he's like, but it's a brand, and when you take it and you cut it up and you sell it as Blue Magic, you're damaging my brand, he's like, call it whatever you want to call it, but don't call it Blue Magic, because you're hurting my brand when you call it Blue Magic. So it's like, you're hurting the brand, they hurt the brand of Medicare for All. They hurt the brand of the Green New Deal when they nominally support it only in name only, and they don't actually back it with the policy. They end up doing more harm to it, in fact. And so you had the Democrats, I think, do more damage to the support for Medicare for All during the primary than Republicans had been able to do for the past 4 years under Trump. So absolutely. All right, let's jump to the next clip because I just want to make sure we get through all of these. We got 5 minutes left to go, so this will be the last clip that we get to show. Unfortunately, I don't think that I'm going to be able to show the final clip, but maybe I'll just play them right back to back if I have time. First clip, this next clip up will be on his comments on housing, what his solutions for housing would be. All right.
we need universal rent control right now, like we did during World War II, when they were putting money into arms instead of housing. And rents were going up. As a stopgap measure to stop all these evictions and displacement due to rent rises. And then we need public housing done the right way, not just isolated projects in the worst part of town for people of color that further segregates them, but mixed income like they do in Europe. You got professionals, middle income working people, and low income people in the same developments. So it's a desegregation program. Give me an energy program. They'll be powered by clean energy and green materials. It'll be a jobs program, obviously. And by linking it to building a real transit system, we can create walkable communities and fight sprawl and inefficient use of resources, as well as an affordable housing program. So our Eco-Socialist Green New Deal budget calls for 25 million units over 10 years. Now, there's a Green New Deal housing program we got from AOC and Bernie Sanders. They only call for 2.5 million units over 10 years. And I don't know where they got a number, but there's 10 million people that are low income, don't have access to affordable housing now. We need to build 25 million units if it's going to be desegregated housing, and 40% of those units are reserved for low income people. So those 10 million low income people have access to affordable housing. I mean, if you're going to propose a good program, which the AOC Sanders program is, scale it up to solve the problem. Don't play tokenism with us. So, jobs.
All right, that was beautiful right there. Just beautiful. And he talked about it being, universal rent control, public housing, for all 25 million units being built over the next 10 years, 40% of those to low income people and low income families. That's something that should be on the American Families program. That's where you would talk about American families right there. This is what American families need. I guarantee you we don't hear the words, universal rent control or anything near these numbers of specifics of like building 25 million units. He talked about how it would be a jobs program, clean energy program if you use the Vienna model and build green housing, and it would be an affordable housing program as well. So I want to really get to this last one. This is him on the topic of healthcare. So let me get one last clip in here. If you have any quick thoughts, Kwame, please share them. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
No, let's go right into it.
All right, jumping on this last one, and this last one is only a minute, so it's a quick one. Sorry. Okay. This is Howie Hawkins on the topic of healthcare.
Jobs, income, housing, healthcare, Medicare for all. We want to go further than socializing the payment. We want to socialize the delivery as well. Hospitals and clinics, we want to bring them into the public sector. Put the doctors and the nurses, the other healthcare workers, make them public employees and make them accountable to us through locally elected health boards. 2/3 by the public, 1/3 by the workers. They bring in expertise. So they answer to us so we can make sure every neighborhood's got the healthcare resources it needs and that we're rationally using. We don't want hospitals competing for customers with the latest MRI when some neighborhoods don't even have a clinic and a doctor that people can go to. That's what community control of a national health service can do. And we had a bill like that. Ron Dellums introduced back in the 70s. We had three options: Nixon, Kennedy, and Dellums. Nixon is Obamacare. Have the federal government mandate private insurance and subsidize it. Kennedy was single payer payment for services that are privately delivered. And this Dellums system was a democratic, socialized system. That's what we really need. And actually, it's more cost effective than just socializing payment.
All right. Okay. So that was Howie Hawkins on the topic of healthcare. And you see he takes it a step further than Medicare for all, saying let us just go ahead and just socialize the entire service, national health services, just like they have in the UK. It just saved, the prime minister got the same healthcare that a working class person would have gotten. He had to go to the same hospitals. That's how you guarantee that they build proper facilities when they might have to use those same facilities. All right, the debate's going to start right now, so I got to get over to the debate. And okay, this candidates still aren't on stage yet. I'm watching it live. The candidates still aren't on stage yet, so not a massive rush here. They say it starts in 3.5 minutes or so is what I'm seeing. So it's going to start up in about 3 minutes. So we actually got a few minutes till it goes live. So we'll just keep on. We got a little time here to cover. Perfect. So. All right. Taking a quick look at comments. Please, if you haven't done so already, if you're just joining us, immediately hit that like button down below. Please hit the like button. Follow us if you're watching on Twitch, and subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe. We need to grow the channel. I see a couple new comments from some new folks over there. I want to make sure y'all subscribe. We definitely will get to all your comments. Tammy, if you see any comments that we can take here, What Up America says both parties suck, Johnson, and that's a beautiful Tim Black quote, and yes, they absolutely do, and we're about to see that in this debate. Connie V says, everyone ready for a shit show with this debate? Oh, and I think I mentioned I don't know if I mentioned, but there's a muted mics rule in this debate. So this debate, the moderator has the ability to mute the mics, and for every 15-minute segment, for the first 2 minutes that each candidate speaks on each 15-minute segment, for the first 2 minutes for each candidate, the other candidate's mic will be muted. So for the first 2 minutes for each of them to speak, they'll speak without anyone muting it, without the other candidate being able to talk over them, and that's 2 minutes each. And then there should be no more muting. They'll be allowed to talk over each other as much as they want after that, for the rest of those the remaining 11 minutes of each of those segments. So this, I think, actually, I saw Kyle Kalinske tweeted out shortly ago that that might be that might end up hurting Biden, because now he's going to have to talk 2 minutes coherently, which might be a struggle for him. So he was like, they got to have him on that good Addy tonight. So, all right. Connie said, holy crap, substance. Yes, I'm glad you got to see that, Connie. That was a thank you for the comment in the Discord that prompted it. So Connie says, makes me so sad that we won't hear any of this stuff in the debate. Yeah, absolutely. The American people get robbed of this, and they're not able to hear any. We're told that this is as far as the limits or the bounds of our possibilities is what we're about to see, and we all know that that's not true. And it's they force you into a cognitive dissonance, and you have to suspend disbelief just to go into these things and make it through 90 minutes of it. Connie V says, I think it's possible to do nuclear safely, but I don't know if it's possible under capitalism. Yeah, I'm mixed on nuclear, honestly, and the effectiveness of it, honestly. If we have another way to harness solar energy, seems like a better idea to do than all the risks that come along with nuclear waste disposal, and the risk of nuclear annihilation. Just look at the doomsday clock. That's closer than ever to predicting nuclear, some form of, apocalypse for us. And they think nuclear annihilation and the climate are the two most significant factors that push them to move it so close. Connie V says, my understanding is that the problem with using only things like wind or solar is it's not consistent enough. Yeah, that's what they say. But I think that we really have to see it, because it's about batteries and storage. How do you store that energy in a way that's efficient? Jalarco Jones says the problem of inconsistencies will be solved as battery tech advances, so we can still have power when the wind dies or the clouds roll in. Exactly. It's all about, battery and storing that in batteries. Great point, Jalarco Jones. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I don't know if that's what that little symbol means. Is no. Okay, that's just telling me it's YouTube. Okay, yes. Subscribe, Jalarco. Please subscribe to the channel. Connie V says, hell yes, I'm so happy to be voting for this guy. Me too. I've already cast my vote for Howie Hawkins in Massachusetts. I'm in a safe blue state, so don't jump down my throat, all of you Biden supporters, when I say that. Jalarco Jones says, I didn't vote green for the first time since 2004 because they didn't make the ballot in my state. Oh, that makes me so angry. They probably did make the ballot in your state. Which state are you in, Jalarco, if you don't mind me asking? They may have made the ballot in your state, and then the Democrats fought to get them removed from the ballot in 3 different states. So that could be the issue. All right, the candidates are coming to the stage now, so we'll pull over there soon. Jalarco Jones says, but I sure as hell didn't vote for either of these clowns. I love you, Jalarco. I love you. Don't let them hijack your vote like that. If they remove candidates from the ballot, that's so undemocratic. All right, we're going to get over to this coverage, y'all. Again, we're probably not going to cut away really. So we're going to strap in 90 minutes here, and then we'll come in right after it ends with commentary. We'll take all your comments. We'll be in the chat. So please drop comments in the chat. We'll be in the chat the whole time. But we'll pop in and out maybe on video, but we'll try to stay quiet and let you hear the whole thing. All right. Let me get you over to the debates here. Again, we're watching this on C-SPAN. Okay.
Is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it, and I got better. And I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune, whether it's 4 months or a lifetime. Nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators. We're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have numerous others. Then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular, that's the head of logistics. And this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine. And we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter. And he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no
I don't think we're
plan.
going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me, many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal, but it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now, but it was a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic. It was horrible. We didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also, everything that he said about the way every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
Vice President Biden, your response.
My response is he is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
I say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families, every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, this is dangerous. And you catch it. And, I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then I have a question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, he said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? and you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that it came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that it came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. The warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. What Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing. You're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even. And because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did. You
I
certainly
did. I talked about a xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to handling
He thought
this.
I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
that's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the name, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods. And he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools. President Trump,
I think we have to respond, if I might.
Please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. You know, I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And that's what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Simply not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open, but when they need resources to open, you need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexi-glass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that what we're going to make sure that we open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. Come on.
President Trump, let me follow up with you quickly.
By the way, I will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no money. Putting up plexiglass is unbelievably expensive, and it's not the answer. I mean, you're going to sit there in a cubicle wrapped around with plastic. These are businesses that are dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You just can't. Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look at what New York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
when
about—
you say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes and they've been closed and they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony, but he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem. I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay. He said, this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people. He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us, Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we find out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move on.
I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it. You have raised a lot of money, tremendous amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money as president and as somebody that knows most of those people. I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America. I would blow away every record, but I don't want to do that because it puts me in a bad position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Don't tell me about Wall
Average
Street.
contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's talking to them a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this, folks. We are in a situation where we have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question. Why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife. And you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million. And you know, someday you're going to have to explain, why did you get 3.5? I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that. And through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, DNI, he said, the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, you know, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond. 30
straight
seconds.
here.
And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants, underwrote it. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years, tens of millions of dollars I prepaid because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you
that.
could release
Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions about all of this, but I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have
soon
a
as the audit is
deadline for
finished.
when you're going to release them
I
to the
get
American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated because
you
I have a
don't
lot
have
of
a time.
people in there
Okay.
deep down in the IRS. They treat me horribly. We made a deal. It was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you
Yep.
both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance
Some
to
point
talk
out
about
this
this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years
Everybody
you're going to
knows
release
it.
your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do
Okay.
know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
Very
So
quickly, President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both of you
Sure.
on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. 48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent 1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong, because
All
the
right.
kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken. I mean, your brother made money in Iraq.
Let me
millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about? China. I have not had it. The only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
Never
President
to
Trump,
deal with
let me
China. By the
ask
way,
my question to you.
But
and
could
then
I just
you'll-
one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. 183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy.
I'm going to let the vice president
That's
respond to that quickly,
100%
and then I need to get to a
dishonest.
question to you. Very
No
quickly, Mr.
basis
Vice
for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is for you. Since you took office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's what it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people. I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking up money every
President Trump,
place he
thank you.
goes.
We do need to move on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said, we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way I will run it. And that's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we were president and vice president.
All right, let's talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, no, I have to
Yes.
respond to that.
Okay, very quickly, and
His
then we're
son
going to move
walked
on
out
to
with
North
$1.5 billion
Korea.
from China to
Not
manage after
true.
spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two, number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy,
true.
though, what
No, but wait a
specifically are
minute.
you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going
First
to
of
make
all,
them pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave
New
$28 billion.
sanctions? New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers. because
Taxpayers' money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money. Didn't
No,
come
no,
from
yeah,
China.
you know who the taxpayer is? It's called China. China
Not
paid
true.
$28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay.
And now we have a steel
Okay,
industry.
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
Our response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making. And the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont, they're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want
That is a
to talk
typical
about
statement.
North Korea.
Excuse me, just
I
for
do
1
want to turn
second,
to
please.
10 seconds, Mr. President,
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing. And then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk
I'm
about
not
North
a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I
President
got elected.
Let's
Get off the subject of China. Let's talk around sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test. And yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next one.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war. And he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be dead right now.
President
We
Trump,
don't have a
that's
war,
30
and I have a
seconds.
good
Thank you.
relationship.
Vice President Biden, to you, North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat right
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy, who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off, and they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get that the Korean Peninsula should be a nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American
Kristen,
families.
they tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay, I
know
got to
for
give him a
fact they
chance to
tried.
respond to that
He
before we
wouldn't
move
do
on.
it.
You
And
know,
that's
I-
okay. You know what? North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people don't understand. Having a good
President
relationship
Trump,
with
we have
leaders
to
of
move
other
on because we
countries
have
is
a lot
a
of
good thing.
we have a lot of questions to get
Yes,
to.
not
That's
Your
like
response.
saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe, the rest of Europe. Come on. The reason he would not meet with President Obama is because President Obama said, we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to legitimize you. We're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
And it
let's
didn't
move
happen.
on. Let's
Excuse
move on
me.
and talk about
He left
American
me a
families.
mess, Kristen.
President Trump, okay, we do
They
need to
left
move on.
me a mess. North Korea was a mess.
We
And
need
in fact,
to move
if
on
you
so that
remember
we
the
can
first
get to
2
all
or
of
3
other
months,
questions tonight,
there was a
President
very
Trump.
dangerous period in my first 3 months before we sort of worked things out a little bit.
Okay.
There was a they left us a mess. And Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is healthcare, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and healthcare is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision, run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down. Everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. What we'd like to do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will have to run it and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What I would like to do is a much better healthcare, much better, will always protect people with pre-existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful healthcare. The Democrats will do it because there'll be tremendous pressure on them, and we might even have the House by that time. And I think we're going to win the House, okay? You'll see, but I think we're going to win the House. But come up with a better healthcare, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private healthcare. Far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care, people that have been successful, middle-income people, been successful. They have 180 million plans, 180 million people, families, under what he wants to do, which will basically be socialized medicine. He won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180 million plans. We have done an incredible job on health care. And we're going to do even better.
Okay, Vice President Biden, yes, this is for you. Your healthcare plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
What I'm going to do is pass Obamacare with a public option, become Biden care. The public option is an option that says that if you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why I didn't, not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually protect pre-existing. There's no way he can protect pre-existing conditions. None, zero. You can't do it in the ether. He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people, because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and the economic spillover, 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare, and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government? What's your response?
I say it's ridiculous. It's like saying that, we're the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable healthcare. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions, as well as a whole range of other people who in fact are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance, your company's gone under? We have to provide health insurance for people at an affordable rate, and that's what I do.
President Trump,
Excuse me, he was there
response.
for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years. And it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine. And it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine, just like he went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania after he gets a nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania and he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never asked that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way.
But somebody should ask the question.
You can ask
he goes for a year. There will be
We
no
have
fracking.
a number of topics.
No, but that's a big question.
We're going to get to. We're going to get to.
It's the same thing with socialized medicine.
I have to respond.
Vice President, your response, please.
My response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period. Period, period, period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on healthcare. Not a thing.
Tristan, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine. And when he and healthcare, when he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroying, and destroying your Social Security. And this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They wanted to make it work.
Okay, let's let Vice President Biden respond.
It doesn't
Vice
work.
President
He's
Biden,
a very
your
confused
response.
guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that are going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security, Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So no, I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get
10
rid of,
seconds,
he
Mr.
tried to
President,
hurt
and then I
Social
have to go to
Security
another
years
question.
ago. Years ago. Go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All
One
right,
thing,
let's move
but
on.
this
I'm
is
going to
the
move
guy
on.
that
Let
when
me,
they announced
Mr. President, I have to
last
move on
week,
to the next question,
they said
or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
going to
will
have time to
boom
talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's
biggest
move on to the
analysts are
next
saying that.
question
Let me respond.
very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more dollars. $700 billion more dollars, because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on.
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to move on.
Stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew it.
We're going to move on to the next question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work. And as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty, and more families are going hungry every day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House, because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President.
The Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
Let me follow up with you, Vice President.
we made a
Biden,
deal, the
because
Republicans
let me
will
ask
pass
Vice
it.
President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets. So then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they can keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter with these guys?
The bill that was passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these states. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right, I want
If
to.
I get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. they're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. Is not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to
One
immigration,
thing very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to
said
get
we
your
have to help our
reaction.
small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very
we have
recently.
to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses. How are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Is that still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
in a
what I
second
really
administration?
in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
Okay, President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through
But
merit.
how will you reunite these kids with their families,
Let me just tell you,
Mr. President?
they built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages. And then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages. And they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them. And then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this
525
conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to
did
that?
it. We changed.
did not
They built the
separate
cages.
They,
who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I
about
will say this.
immigration.
They went
10
down.
seconds,
We
and then
brought
I need to ask
reporters,
you.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
and
of
have
them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with their
just ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask them that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because we made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy and they want to do that is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River and it's illegal. And you say, oh no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
Kristen, he had 8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed without having a specific. We got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the following premise, why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move on.
It just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe. They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay, President Trump, let's give Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
You don't know the law, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Know the law, what he's telling you is simply not true.
Well, check it out. They don't come back.
Check it out.
All right, let's move on.
But we don't have to worry about it
because
they terminated it, so we don't have to worry about it.
Let's move on to the next
And you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All right, let's talk about our next section, which is race in America. And I want to talk about the way Black and Brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a Black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street, making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, just yes, sir, no, sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. Well, guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it, but we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion. not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the Black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the Black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform, Obama and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture. And everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the Black and Hispanic communities, and then historically Black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and they said, I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding. And I did 10-year long-term funding. And I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them and they like me and I like them. But I saved it. Colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice President?
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is a guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent Black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences, over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you do it? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do and you're going to do this, but you were there just a short time ago and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me because what's happening here is, you know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up.
Excuse me.
Please respond,
If
and then we're
this
going to have
stuff
follow-up
is true
questions.
about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody's
Take a look
President
at the
Trump, I
laptop
want to
from
stay
hell.
on the issue
Excuse
of
me,
race. We're
take a look
talking
at
about
the
the issue.
laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're
Nobody.
talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
And I
you've
have to
just
respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very
there
quickly.
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And
You
that's
gotta be-
exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This
was
is
told.
where he's going. The
All right.
laptop is Russia,
Yes.
Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go
President,
again with Russia.
We're going to continue
Boy,
on the
boy.
issue of race. Mr. President,
believe
you've
that one.
described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that Black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't
by
know.
the-
I mean, I
the
don't know what
videos?
to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of Black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark, but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me
Abraham-
ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire, every single one. Started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to get rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys, last time we were on stage here, he said, I told them to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a
You
follow-up.
know, he made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said
where
you're
did that-
Abraham
No,
Lincoln.
where did that? No.
You said-
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the Black community.
And I'm
I
saying,
didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the Black community. Now, you have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
oh God.
tens of thousands of Black men mostly in jail.
All right,
true.
let me
And you know what?
let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it
President
because if
Biden
you look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that you
Biden
treated them
about
very, very badly.
The-
Just
the-
take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime
Okay.
bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young Black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the sense and particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think maybe the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to the drug, but they were not in the crime bill.
But why didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a lot of it done. We released 38,000. We got 38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I just asked one question. Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why, Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress. That's the answer.
Well, you got to talk them into it, Joe. Sometimes
All right.
you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section.
Like I did with criminal justice reform. I had to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen, we're running out of time, so we got to get on to climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
and we haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change and climate warming, global warming, is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world, we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit limit emissions, will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. because what it does, it will create millions of new good paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, you're
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC +3. They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC +3. Look, their real plan cost $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people. This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it can be good politically. Right. They want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was 6. It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows. I mean, and many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President respond, and we're running out of time, and we have a lot more questions to get to. So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more questions.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queen.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan was, endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing job, and they pay good prevailing wages, $45, $50 an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump,
Excuse me.
please respond, and then I have some follow-up.
We are energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds. It's very intermittent. It's got a lot of problems, and they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist
Solar.
said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So
False.
It's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. And what about fracking?
All right, let me allow Vice President Biden to respond.
I never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is, he's flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer, we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money in doing it. But it's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this part, and then
Excuse me,
we have.
he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I
Good.
am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking and or oil on federal
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was under, in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it. And I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All
And
right.
everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice
that.
President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that in fact pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn in the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them. It matters how you keep them safe. What do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would he
question.
close
It
down
falls-
the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close
it
down the
falls-
oil
By the way, I
industry?
would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's a big
transition.
statement.
It is a big statement
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but
That's
you
a
can't
big
do that.
statement.
Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
we have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I
Ohio.
have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he gonna
final
get
question
China to
both
do
of
it?
you. No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We have
going to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We
No,
have to
I'm
move on
going
to
to
our final
rejoin Paris
question.
Accord and make
Oh.
China abide by what they agreed to.
All right,
That'll
this
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make a country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, et cetera. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best Black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success, but I'm cutting taxes and he wants to raise everybody's taxes and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country: decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, and we are back. So that is wrapped up now. I'll let it play in the background without any sound on for myself. But it looks like that's it. All right, so let's get Kwame properly up in here. I think Kwame just needs a sec and then he'll be on. But yeah, so all right, there's a lot to work through there. Please, if you haven't done so already, immediately hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel. It takes 2 seconds. Just hit that subscribe button, and also share this out. Share it on social media, whatever social media you use, share it out. Help us grow the channel and grow support. Want to give a shout out and a big thank you to Brian Dew for his tip. Shout out to Brian Dew for tipping $5 on coffee. You can always send us super chats as well if you're in here and you use the super chat feature. We do prefer the tips on coffee because they don't take as much money out of there. So we appreciate it however you get it to us, however you get the support to us, we do appreciate it. And of course you can support us on Patreon. That's the best way to support. For as low as $1 a month. You can become a member of the show. Patreon.com/Radical Democracy. Links are in the description box below. Links are also in the description box below for coffee as well. ko-fi.com/Radical Democracy. That's where Brian tipped us. And that is the way to get us money most directly. So appreciate that. Appreciate all the support from all of our community. And thank you for being with us during this, for the last 90 minutes, hanging out with us, chatting. Love the chat going on there. Yeah, a lot to get through. So Kwame, off the top, do you have any initial just sort of broad thoughts about what you just saw?
Just
how do you feel about
less chaotic overall, thankfully? I guess mostly because of the mute feature. My God, just like the comment section, sometimes mutes can be a wonderful thing. Again, like you had pointed out in the middle of it, it felt like a lot of no substance, not really any real policy talk, nothing that'll affect working class people. I don't understand really who this was for, especially with that large just like detour to Russia Town in the middle of it. That was maddening. My God.
Yeah. That was during the question on race. They detoured out to the Russia stuff in the middle of a discussion on race. That really that infuriated me. Like, there's 15 minutes. You got 15 minutes to spend on this issue of race, and you really go and swing. And the moderator clearly tried to take control of it. She did, and they clearly heard her, and then ignored that request, and that really bugged me. So that seemed very intentional, that they were trying to run out the clock on the segment, because neither of them do well on the issue of race, and they just wanted to run as far away from the
I think
question
it's
as you can.
super interesting. I mean, it's just like, how the hell did we end up here? It is so painfully apparent that they're both trash on everything. They're both bad on race, so neither one of them wants to talk about race. So they try to pivot to Russia, but neither one of them wants to talk about Russia. So they try to pivot to Wall Street, but neither one, like, it's just anytime, like, it works for Trump, though, because at the end of the day, Trump can be completely hypocritical and say whatever he wants, and no one will ever call him for it. So even when it comes down to something where they're both terrible on it and it will make them both look bad, it still works out in Trump's favor, because he can't really do wrong, which is yet again why Joe Biden is just such a bafflingly bad pick. What do you attack on when you're Joe Biden? Like, you're, if not equally bad on everything, you're bad enough on everything that you can't.
Yeah, exactly. The places that I was perturbed by Biden attacking Trump from the right on North Korea as well. Like, he attacks from the right on a lot of issues. Even on the issue of policing, sometimes he attacks from the right and says he wants to increase funding, and definitely on foreign policy. And so I that's really frustrating to see to see Trump be able to attack him from the left and to flank him from the left on so many issues is embarrassing.
The thing is that, like, and I get it too. I understand why he attacks from the right. He's reaching, because he doesn't give a damn again about the left. He's reaching more for the centrists and still trying to court conservatives and everything. It's like this conversation me and you had a while back off camera about how it is easier to move someone over when they're closer already to your beliefs. So of course he's going to try and pull people from that side, because those are the people he relates to. Yeah. He can't hide it. He can't.
Yeah. So do you feel overall, you feel that Trump was sort of came across, do you think that he gains in this, or everything stays steady, or
it's tough to say. It's really tough to say, because coming out of it into it, I felt like Biden started well. I feel like he was coherent, if not boring a little. He just was kind of coasting, in my opinion, personally. And I feel like Trump is his usual self. He's his usual go off on this trail or rant, and just he's a terrible speaker. But it seemed like he did his homework on a lot of things. He was dropping some deep cut. Like, if this was a rap battle, like, you could tell he studied him. He was bringing up your middle name is Clarence, you parents had a real good marriage. Like, he did the whole thing. Like, he did his homework on it. And I wish I like Trump, because I would feel real good about how he attacked Biden on a lot of that stuff. Like,
he
was digging deep. He was digging in the crates to get on him on, like, real substantive stuff. Like,
yeah, the crime bill, who built the cages, Joe, I thought was a really heavy hitting line, was the who built the cages, Joe. And that, like, it was terrible, because they're arguing over which one of them like started it with the locking children up, like, in like separating children from their parents, which is awful. But we, so I think that I honestly, my overall take, my sort of, bird's eye view of it was that I felt that Biden actually came away a little bit better in this debate overall. I think that towards the end, while he may have slipped up a bit, I think that for the people that are watching this debate right now, for the like 8 undecided voters in America right now, like they are going to be the type of people that you're not going to be far in any direction. You're not far to the left. You're not far to the right. You're not even a little. You are truly like a like in the center. And the thing that I think will tip those kind of people, when I think about who's the type of person to be in the center still and be undecided, what type of person is undecided right now, it's going to be more likely to be a lower information person, or somebody who, sees themselves as more apolitical. And I think that the style points come off pretty importantly. And I think that overall things like seeming presidential actually matter in a debate like this, where it's already 2 polarized candidates. So for the most part, like people like us, everyone that's watching here with us today, probably made up your mind. You know who you're voting for. If you're voting for either one of these candidates, you know who you're voting for. I mean, if you're still watching this with our discussion, you're probably either voting for Biden or you're voting for a third party candidate or not voting. And so I just think that he came across really early on. He was really strong. I think in the COVID top on the whole segment on COVID, I think that was Biden's best segment, because Trump looked so bad with downplaying the issue. He was so bad downplaying the issue that it made it so that it was like, he made Biden look good just relative to that. So I thought that
I'm inclined to agree that that was if he performed as well as he did during the COVID part, I feel like I would feel way better about Biden on this. Though, with that being said, I feel like you may have moved me on this, because looking at the debate, because I do sit and wonder a lot, like you said, not a lot of substance, not a lot of policy talk. But when I sit there and I think about who actually watches this and has it impact how they're going to vote and how it sways them, I have to accept that this may be what they want. They may not really be looking for the policy talk. And if that's the case and they just want empty platitudes, then I feel like Joe Biden kind of knocked it out the park on that, I guess.
Yeah, on the platitude level.
So in that case, if that's who these are really for, then I might come around and say that Biden probably gets the best impact from this.
I thought in that same segment when Trump talked about like who built the cages, Joe, he then turned around and was also like, he talked about how Joe built the cages, but then he also did catch and release, which is totally contradictory. And so I think that there were other things like that people might look at that and see that as, a contradiction. So we can start to flip through some comments as we go. Tammy, if you want to start to pull some comments, shout out to our super producer Tammy for doing her thing. We're not in the same place today, but she is just holding it down from a distance here. So really appreciate all of your help there. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share to your friends. We would really appreciate it. I am going to hijack his plug real quick. Make sure that you follow us on our Patreon. I'm sure we'll have that up there in a second. Follow me as well at Raise Fist Media on YouTube, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure you follow, if you haven't already, Radical Democracy on Patreon or on Ko-fi, K-O-F-I, or is it -F-I? Yep, -F-I. .com/radical democracy. So please, yes, thank you, Kwame, for doing that. Please support in any way you can. And we do appreciate that. We appreciate it. We would love to pick up a new Patreon supporter tonight. That would be wonderful. We would love you for that. We will shout you out for anyone who signs up. We will shout you out on stream. So please support. $1 a month, $1 a month. It ain't asking a whole lot. I'm gonna be real here. It ain't asking a whole lot. If you're not already doing it, I know we got a lot of our Patreon supporters in the chat right now, and love all of those folks, truly. And so please support the show. Yes, in every way, shape, or form. You can also support Racefist Media, patreon.com/racefistmedia as well. Drop a few bucks there as well for Kwame and everything that he does. So please, we need the support independent Black left media. Appreciate y'all. All right, so yeah, we'll flip through some comments. We'll start to take some comments, flip through some comments and such. And yeah, I mean, I think that overall it was a better debate, I would say. Yeah. So I think that overall it was a better debate than the first debate. It went because of the mic muting, like you said. I think because of the mic muting, it really cleaned it up. And for whatever reason, there was less talking over even when the mics weren't able to be muted, because the mics were only being muted for the first 2 minutes for each candidate during each segment. But I think that that sort of trained them to not talk over one another. So it got them in the habit of it. So I noticed Trump not talk. It sort of started towards the end. Things got a little bit messier, in the middle, towards the end, or things started to slip a little bit. But I think overall it was a much cleaner debate than the last.
Just petty me. I cannot tell you if I could just get a picture framed on the wall of Donald Trump's face when he's muted and trying to talk, that made me feel so good inside. I just love that look of the. And then he out there, just so good. I'm sorry.
I didn't get to see that at all. I missed that because I was taking notes for most of it, so I didn't get to I had my head down for half of it because I was taking so many damn notes. And so yeah, I wish I had caught some of those. That's awesome. I also loved Trump's comment on windmills. Had me dying, about the bird killing birds and stuff. I'm just like, oh, this damn fool
saying this. How are we still on this anti-windmill propaganda? And the Bernie drops were all dope. The Bernie, she's more liberal than Bernie.
Oh gosh,
tickles me in all the worst ways. Jeez.
Yeah, absolutely. That was good stuff. Connie V says we have to protect all our big beautiful birds from those evil windmills. Yes, absolutely. Trump is, oh man, yeah, that was great. What Up says, oh, so Trump is a bird protector now. Yeah, apparently he cares more about birds than black folk. That's all I know.
What do you mean? He's been the best. He's treated them the best since Abraham Lincoln.
Oh man, he's the best president for black people since Abraham Lincoln, y'all. That was hilarious. And
that whole thing was so. My question: do you think that Trump is really just that absolutely off his rocker, that he really didn't get that? Was he smart enough? Was he trying to run the clock with the whole dragging out that Abraham Lincoln line? Because it was so obvious what he meant. I'm like, why are we still talking about this?
Yeah. No, I feel like, yes, it's part of the a tactic of running out the clock, and just Trump's good at that because he can sort of he
play dumb
in and out of and the way that he just in his cadence and the way that he talks, it's all over the place, and it's hard to follow along, and you don't know where one thought starts and the next one ends, and before you know it, he's off on this other topic, and you're just like, oh whoa, how did we get here, buddy? So yeah, I thought that was overall just substanceless. Unfortunately, that was my biggest takeaway from all this, was that we got no substance whatsoever. I try to note anytime I heard a policy mentioned, and I swear I didn't hear any substantive policy plan mentioned from either candidate, really. Nothing that I could think of. They talked about some of their records and what they did in the past. There was really nothing mentioned about a substantive policy plan moving forward. I mean, you could, Joe Biden, he didn't say we'll raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. He said the $15, that we should have a $15 minimum wage. He has come out in like again nominally supported that, but hasn't really been championing it. I thought his response on that issue, on that question about the minimum wage, I thought that it was as decent as you're going to get from a Democratic, corporate Democrat. So I think that that's as good as you're going to get from one of them, is a $15 minimum hour. I think that, What Up says, been waiting for Joe Biden to say $15 an hour. He'd already, taken so long just to mention that once now. And Jalarco Jones says if the federal minimum wage kept up with the inflation, it would be over $20 an hour. Fuck these crumbs. Yeah. Exactly. Absolutely. Like, this is like, that's what it should be. I think it's $22.50 or something like that an hour if it keeps up with inflation.
Two things I want to point out. One, it's insanely infuriating every time that Donald Trump says something that is just not true. Like when he said about the $15 per hour, like he just says things that can be easily debunked, just completely easily. It's super infuriating, and makes me wish they had like fact checkers for these debates. But the other thing is that the $15 an hour thing hits me so much, and it takes me back to those of you who are lovely and awesome enough to join us during our pre-show when we were watching some of the Howie Hawkins talking, and what he said about and this was about the Democrats and Bernie Sanders and AOC's plan, about how it was a good plan, but it didn't go far enough. It didn't scale up. And that is the same thing with 15. That is a never ending thing, is that we never can get enough. It's always crumbs. They're trying to put bandages on bullet holes, as I like to call it, every time.
We've been talking about $15 an hour since 2016. Since then, there's been 4 years now of inflation. Every year we're inflating at least 2%. It's usually somewhere between 2 to 3% a year inflation. Like, if we were just keeping up with the inflation over the past few years, we should at least be talking about at minimum $16 an hour right now. But I talked about this and said way back in 2016, I was like, we need to start right now campaigning on 20 in 2020. Like, that should have been our slogan, is 20 in 2020. Like, we should be $20 an hour here in 2020. We should be fighting for $20 an hour. And it just, the slogans write themselves. It would just be too easy. And it's the right thing to do. It's the right policy to be campaigning on, is a $20 minimum wage tied to cost of living, wherever you are, tied to cost of living and tied to inflation. So it automatically moves up with the rate of inflation, and have some calculation, some way that they can simply calculate out and say, okay, we're going to take the minimum wage time multiplied by your, regional multiplier based on wherever you live for the cost of living multiplier, and whatever it happens to be. If it's, some places you're going to need 1.5 times what they're talking about. You're going to need a $30 minimum wage in some places to talk about a dignified living wage. If we're talking about, because I'm so sick of talking about the scraps and the $15 an hour, that's $30,000 a year before taxes. That means that after taxes, you're taking home about $20,000, at best. And then, how are you now? How is $20,000? That can't pay for my last apartment. $20,000 doesn't pay for my last 2-bedroom apartment. So how is a family supposed to survive on a full-time job paying $15 an hour? In most American cities, that's not a dignified living wage. So I think that we need to go a lot further than that. Totally agree, Jalarco.
I saw Tammy had up somebody asking if now was the right time to raise the minimum wage, I believe. And it's been past time. The studies show that American families and economy.
That was the topic. So this was one of the questions during the debate. Yep. Was, do you think this is the right time to raise the minimum wage? Yeah.
And it's long overdue. The fact of the matter is, like, to everyone who's against this, they say it's going to hurt the small businesses. It's not, because when you give middle class and especially poor people money, they spend it. The problem is when you give rich people the money, they hoard it. We spend money. It makes no sense. And you know that we spend money because you spend 85% of your time shaming poor people for their spending their money and feeding their families and oh, they're out there buying steaks and all this stuff. You shame them for spending their money, but at the same time you want to say that it's gonna hurt everyone if we raise the minimum wage. No, it'll go right back into the economy. That's how you boost it. You give it to the people who are going to spend, not the people who are going to throw it in a bank account somewhere overseas that it won't help this country. It doesn't make sense to me.
In fact, we did a piece the other day. We covered here on the show the JP Morgan Chase Bank did a study based on their own account holders and did this anonymized study and showed that since the throughout for the entire year and throughout the entire course of the pandemic here in the US, they showed starting in January what the people's spending, weekly spending was, what their based on how much money flowed in and out of their checking accounts, and they showed that people were the spending dipped significantly once in fact it increased quickly. It spiked up right before the lockdown began because that was people prepping for the pandemic, and then right after that it took a massive drop, and then after it stayed there until the unemployment $600 a week extra took effect, and then it quickly rapidly rose right back up to the heights of pre-pandemic spending. So what that showed was that when you gave the people that money, that extra money that they needed, it's not extra for them, it's what they deserved. People were finally getting their due, finally getting what they deserved, and it showed that they will take that money and they will spend it again. They went back and they were spending the same amount that they were spending before. So you give people money and they will spend it. So those dollars get circulated back into the economy, and it's good for everything. It's good for business. It's good for small business, big business. It's good for working families. Instead of trying to play games with the trickle down economics, we need to do, trickle up economics, and we, give the money directly to the people and let them spend it into the economy. The rich will eventually get it.
And that would also maybe help some of these restaurants that are going out of business right now. If we increase the minimum wage and we were to get another stimulus package going, maybe some of these restaurants wouldn't have to go out of business because people would have money to spend at them. It's not because the cities are closed. It's not because of the regulations that are put in place. It's because people don't have money because everyone got laid off and no one has income.
Yeah. So, and that's really wild because, people are hurting right now. And I just didn't hear either one of these candidates speaking to that during this debate. Like, if anyone did speak more to people, it's going to be, I honestly think it will come across as Joe Biden, to be honest, because he has some of the rhetoric of working class Joe, and he can play that game. And I'm from Scranton, and, and it works with the folks that are left to the undecided voters that are left. I think that sort of thing. So, this is not the kind, I don't think anybody on the left was expecting anything from this debate and anything to be, they're not trying to, Joe Biden wasn't trying to make concessions to the left during this debate, really. But I think that he did enough to not alienate the left in this one,
This was way better. Yeah, this was way better than the last one. Jeez. At least he didn't go out there and slander and shit on the ideas that we support. I guess. Oh boy, they raised the bar so low. I can't believe we're complimenting them on not attacking us.
Yeah, it's damning with faint praise, if anything. But it is. I feel like that's the sort of little takeaway that you can make from it. Is at least he didn't further alienate the left through this one. It was just like he just stays where he already was. Which again, to me, if you're somebody like me, again, safe blue state, but I voted for I voted third party. So if you're somebody like me, there was nothing, nothing that he could have done here. Obviously, you already made up your mind. And so, yeah, was proud to cast my vote for Howie Hawkins here in Massachusetts. So, yeah, I thought, what else? We can.
Yeah, I also feel like one thing I did want to, Joe Biden almost had a good line, at least for the liberals and the people he was targeting, but he fumbled it when he was talking about being at the dinner table and reaching out and them not being there in the coronavirus thing. I was like, man, the liberals just started cheering for that one right there, and that again, like I said, if based on what you said, if it is low information voters and completely undecided to that degree who he's targeting, I feel like just on the platitudes and the coherent sentences, I feel like he did all right.
Yeah, because that was another thing. Joe Biden was coherent throughout the entirety of it, which sadly in this day that actually gets you like that is so gross. It's so gross, y'all. It's so sad.
Joe Biden won this debate because he didn't shit his pants. That's where we're at.
That's the bar. That's the bar that's been set. I thought that Trump did have some good hits on Biden. He definitely hit him hard in a few places, but I honestly think it works more if you're on the left. I don't think that it moves any liberal. Any liberal does not move off of their support for Biden based on anything that Trump said, of course. But I think that what it does is it at least can depress some of the vote for. It will depress some black voter turnout. It absolutely will depress black voter turnout when he hits them on things like the crime bills. It will depress Latino turnout when he hits, overall. Obviously, there's a varying, these aren't monoliths that we're talking about. The black, black voters, Latino voters, these are not monoliths, but overall, broadly speaking, they'll get more movement. More people will be the kind of people to just stay home because it's like, all right, well, neither one of these people are fighting for us is sort of what can come out of that. So I think that it will serve to depress some voter turnout, some of those attacks that he landed, which was like the crime bill one, the who built the cages, Joe, was another one that I think is a pretty
Wall Street was another one where I felt like he kind of went at Joe's neck on that one, especially with that article going out about him courting GOP members for his cabinet. Man. Anyone that's sick of the establishment and is like, I don't know how you excite them at all.
Yeah.
When you do this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I don't, people at this stage, I think that Biden knows that he's got enough of a lead right now that they feel comfortable with it, that the strategy is hold steady, just hold steady, stay on both feet, and just live, just survive until through this election. And I think that he'll sort of coast through to a victory at this stage. I don't think, as far as movement on this, I think that just like everything, I think that people will start to get a little bit more decisive now that this is the last debate. There is no more really. They're like, you've got nothing really left to decide on. I mean, of course, there is something left. There is the stimulus, and whether or not a stimulus gets passed before the election. That is the last significant meaningful. Of course, there's also, of course, the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, but the Republicans have already successfully fast-tracked this process and they'll be voting on that on Monday. As we covered earlier, this is the fastest Supreme Court nominee in our lifetimes, and as far back as we looked, this is the fastest time from nomination to confirmation for any Supreme Court nominee. It's usually twice as long, at least. For some people, it's 3 times as long, or over 3 times as long. It's going to be 30 days from when Trump nominated Amy Coney Barrett to when she's confirmed, if the vote is confirmed on Monday, which, because the Republicans have enough votes, the Democrats don't even need to show up. And the real way to stop it was for them to delay this process and to hold hearings and make sure that the hearings took the appropriate amount of time, demand that the hearings that the FBI is supposed to do, in, background checks on all these, there's a process here that should take the committee process is over a month long usually. So this is these, after Monday, we'll see what comes of it and how long, if at all, the Democrats are able to delay this at all. But it does look like Amy Coney Barrett will be confirmed before the election. And so that, I think, is almost a done deal, and is there's nothing that's pretty much in the bag at this point. So I think that the only sort of up in the air issues are really the stimulus, the economic stimulus, what they do with that. If they do something, I think that it could bump, Trump a little bit. I think that that's the calculation that the Democrats are making as well. And sadly, because they feel like it will help Trump politically, they are willing to not get a deal done. And if a deal does not get done by November 3rd, we should be clear with people. There will not be a deal done until after Biden is inaugurated, if he wins. And there's no guarantee that any deal gets done after Trump is elected. He's got no incentive there after that, really, other than, not letting the economy completely die. And so they'll let it get to the worst point before they step in to help. And unfortunately, I think that means a lot of pain and suffering for a lot of poor and working class Americans in the meantime. So yeah, short of that, I don't think that this debate did anything to move the needle. And really, I think that we'll see a small tightening in the polls. The polls have been tightening. Biden, on the Real Clear Politics average of the polls, he once held an over 10 point lead in the Real Clear Politics average. As of today, it was 7.9 when I checked it earlier. So I'll give it a quick look now and see. But yeah, I think that it is. Yeah, we're seeing 7.9. So yeah, 7.9 is the Real Clear Politics average. So for Biden nationally, if you look at the battleground states, he's doing solid in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. He's got more than 5+ point leads in these states. And so with nothing significant changing, I think it's going to be a close election. But I do think that Biden is going to win the election, and I don't think that this debate did anything to alter the course of that in any way. Brian Dew says, someone said Trump polled about the same now as he did in 2016. The difference is that Biden is polling higher than HRC. Exactly. Yeah. But HRC never really made it over 50% in polls, while Biden has been steady above 50% for over a month now. And so that's significant. And again, national average. So yeah, I think that, I've seen a lot of polls. The polls, again, they are definitely tightening. There is no doubt about it. The polls are tightening, so much so that I'm a little bit less certain for sure than I was before about a Biden victory. But I still think it's going to happen. I just think it's going to be closer. It's not going to be a landslide. Most likely, it's going to be a closer victory. And I think that because there's a closer victory, we should also brace ourselves. The places where if it's a close election, then places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan are going to matter. And those states have rules in place. Those are swing states that have rules that say ballots cannot begin being counted until after the polls close on election day. And so election day is 12 days from now. We're talking about, Tuesday, November 3rd, 12 days away. And many voters have already cast their vote. Tens of millions of Americans have already cast their vote. I've cast my vote. Either I cast my vote through the mail. Some have cast early ballots already. In-person early voting has already opened in some states. There's been some lines of hours long. Brian says, do the polls factor in the electoral college system? So yeah, for the polls, I'll pull up Real Clear Politics, and we can just pop through a few of these real quick if y'all want. Let me pull that up real quick, and we'll just take a look at a few of these polls. All right. Let's see how we're looking on here. Okay, so you'll see that this is the general election, Real Clear Politics. National average is, you can see here, Biden is up 7.9 points, and this is the national Real Clear Politics average. So this isn't just one single poll. This is Real Clear Politics taking all of what they consider all the, the most reliable polls and averaging those together. So you get a much better picture with the averaging of many polls instead of honing in on one single poll, because sometimes there are outlier polls. So national average is 7.9, but you can see some polls have Biden up by as much as 10 points. Recent polls. These are all recent polls between October 8th and October 21st. Biden's been up 8 points. So he's up 8 points on average for all those polls that cross that time range. And most of them are from like October 13th and up. As you know, there's only one from USC that actually dates back to October 8th. All the rest are from even more recent than that. Some of them are as tight as 4 points. National average for the Hill has Biden only leading by 4 right now nationally. They have Biden at 46. So, and that's the Hill. It's not a right wing biased outlet. There's also one recently IBD poll that has Biden with just a 4-point lead. So there are some polls that are showing him closer, showing a tighter race. Some polls that are showing a much wider race. Again, on average, it's 8. But looking at some of those, what Brian was asking was, what about the electoral map? Yes, for one, RCP does have their own electoral map that they do. So on Real Clear Politics, if you go to Real Clear Politics, you'll see that they do have a, let me see if I can, get us one step closer. So you'll see on Real Clear Politics, they do have an electoral map that they do. And this is based on Real Clear Politics averages, what they consider likely Biden, leaning Biden, based on polling averages in each of these states, because Real Clear Politics does do polling averages for each of the individual states as well as the national average. So it's a really good site because you're not just seeing one individual poll at a time. You're seeing the average of a lot of polls that are taken, a lot of high quality polls that have been relied on for decades, literally decades, and have proven to be reliable over decades. As far as people want to say about 2016 in polling, the polls were pretty close, and so some states had Trump even leading on election day, polls that were coming out on election day. And so the polls were actually accurate. It was just within the margin of error in 2016. So Real Clear Politics has Biden here with a 232 electoral votes based on what is either a likely Biden or a lean Biden, and then what is a again, likely or lean Trump. And as you can see, there is Biden would need 270 votes to cross for the electoral map. So they have this great electoral map. You could look at the individual states, and you can see some of the averages for the individual states. You can also just check battleground states here. So we'll take a look at some of the battleground states and just see easily what the lead is in each of those. So for instance, Pennsylvania here has Biden up by an average right now from October 10th to October 20th. So over the past week and a half, Biden's averaging about 5 points up in polls. Some polls have him as tight as 2 points, just a 2-point lead. Some polls have him at a 10-point lead. CNN poll has him at a 10-point lead, but that's an outlier. Obviously, the 2 points are outliers as well. So the 5 points on average in Pennsylvania, that's an important state, very crucial state. But those ballots are going to get counted late because of mail-in voting. Wisconsin has Biden up by 4.6 points. The closest one outlier has them tied, and the highest has Biden +8. But Biden's up 4.6 points in Wisconsin. In North Carolina, this is a crucial one for Trump to win. Trump has to win this state. He has to win this state. But you have Biden leading in many polls. He's up by about 1.8 points on average in these polls. There is a Rasmussen poll that has Trump up by 1 point. But Biden leading like this, I mean, this is a lead that there's a silent Trump vote that happens. People that are ashamed to say that they're voting for Trump, but they go and they vote for him behind closed doors or whatever in private. That's fine. That we should account for that. Take that into account. These polls aren't, there is there is a margin of error in all of these. 1.8 points is most likely within the margin of error for it. Excuse me. So that's something where it's, because some of these polls, their average margin of error is like 3.5 points. It looks like is the average margin of error. So this is certainly within the margin of error, and that's one that is a toss up right now. And that's why North Carolina will be seen as a toss up. That one could go either way right now, but that's one that Trump really needs to win. So the fact that Biden's even, competitive in North Carolina is really good for Biden. Michigan, this was a one that Trump won. Trump won Michigan versus Hillary Clinton by something like 0.3 points. So it was less than 1 percentage point. It was like 0.3 points, some thousands of votes, and 7,000 votes. I forget what the exact number is, but so 0.3 points, probably 70,000, but 0.3 points, percentage points. And right now Biden is up by almost 8 points. And again, some of these comparisons like Biden versus Clinton at this point in the race for last year that they do, when they make those comparisons, they're talking about on the same day, but we have to remember that the election in 2016 was 5 days later. So it was on November 8th. And so there's less time now in this election from the dates that they're giving. There's actually less time. So if they were doing it apples to apples, they would probably go not just same date, but actually same amount of time distance away from the election. And Hillary, wasn't, the polls were tightening the closer that they got. We're even closer than what that lets on. And this is not close. 7.8 points is not close. This looks like this is very likely to me to go to Biden at this point. What is Trump going to do to close this lead in the next 12 days? What could Trump possibly do to close a 7.8 point lead? And even if these polls are off, and the average polling margin of error here is again about 3.5 points, even if it could be 2 points outside the margin of error, and Biden would still win. So we're so far outside the margin of error on this that I just don't see any movement on this in the next 12 days. Nothing is moving these people. People have made their minds up. And again, Biden is over 50% in these polls, as Brian had mentioned. It's not just showing, Trump's support may have stayed around the same. Biden has gained way more support than Hillary got. And there's way fewer undecided voters this year than there were in 2016. So that's just another important point to keep in mind. All right, we'll just flip through a few more really quickly. There's Ohio. Sorry, I just did Michigan by accident. There's Ohio, which is another crucial one for Trump to win. This should be a red state. This is now should be a fairly safe red state. Trump is only up right now by 0.6 points. So in Ohio, which should be an easy win for Trump, he is currently, things are really tight. A bunch of polls have Biden leading recently. So there was a string of polls that have Biden leading over last week, and recently Trump has been polling better. So it will probably go to Trump, but this one again shouldn't really be competitive for Trump. It should be an easy win for him. There's also Arizona. I can't believe that we're talking about Arizona. Like, we shouldn't be talking about Arizona right now. Arizona should be a layup for Trump. It's Arizona. So Arizona is currently Biden plus 3.2. Now, again, this is slightly within, this is within the margin of error on average, the average margin of error on these polls. So it is within the margin of error. But we should, you gotta still, it's even with the margin of error, polls still tend to be closer to accurate. And so, so I think that, 3.2 point lead is significant in a state where you should be down right now. Joe Biden should be the one having to try to pull out a miracle on election day, but he's up 3.2 points in recent polling, so he's looking good there. So so these were just I think that's a good stretch of them to get a feel for. Nevada's one that matters because it has a large Latino population, and Trump is actually making gains with the Latino vote, so that's significant. And this will probably be a much closer race than if it was, say, Trump versus Bernie Sanders, but that's what you get when you go with Biden. So that's a little tour through the polls, and I think that they tell a story of a likely Biden win at this point, and Biden does look good in polls right now. And so I think that Trump is the one who needed to gain something from this debate. He really needed to gain something from this debate, and I don't think that he did, unfortunately. I think that he came off okay and just and they both did, but that's fine for Biden. Biden doesn't need to gain anything at this point, just has to hold steady. And that's my thoughts.
Trump needed to come out there and wallop him, and he most definitely did not do that in any way that people who are undecided will respond to. Yeah, exactly. I think folks like us will enjoy those hits from the left from Trump, and it's unfortunate that we have a candidate that Trump can attack from the left. It just shouldn't be possible for Trump to attack the Democratic nominee from the left. But when we put up these, like Republican light candidates, and this is what we end up getting is, a candidate that Trump can honestly run to the left of on some issues and outflank on their left flank on certain issues, which was unfortunate. I thought on, I think that same thing goes for like China and the issue of China. I feel like Trump, at least if even if Biden wasn't all out attacking him from the right on China, he had Biden shifting right and trying to placate the right on the issue of China and trying to demonize China, when really it was just, it's just that we've handled things badly. And I saw something recently, China is going to account this year for 30% of the global economic growth for the entire planet, like 30% just for China. Ours was a decline, like overall, and meanwhile China is accounting for 30% of all growth in the entire world, which is wild. That's just, they don't have 30% of the world's population, that's for sure. So wild stuff. What Up America says, well, these are polls of how people would vote, not necessarily of the ones that get to vote. They do. These are polling. The polls that they take here are likely voters. So the people that they're questioning in these polls are really likely voters. They tend to be likely voters. They poll two types of people: register voters and likely voters. And a lot of them weight heavily for likely voters. So they do try to take into account the fact that who is a likely voter based on demographics and history, voter history as well, but based on demographics primarily, who are the likely voters. And again, they also know that you voted in past elections and such. So that they do know who the likely voters are, and they are those
those polls do heavily represent them. So I do think that it is fairly representative, and the polls did tell us they painted a fairly accurate picture in 2016, and Hillary ultimately, she won the popular vote, which the polls said she would win the popular vote, and she lost the electoral college. And so yeah, I think that's what I think these polls show an easy win for Biden. Will definitely 100% sure that Biden will win the popular vote. In a democratic society, that would mean he won the vote. But unfortunately, we have to play games with our electoral college, and that is up in the air. Unfortunately, still, it is not a sure thing for Biden. Even Real Clear Politics there is obviously, based on polling, is only willing to give Biden 232 delegates right now. So he's still about 40 shy of a victory right now in the polls. And polls change. We got to look at the polls. Polls can change right up until the last day, but there is a lot less room for the polls to change right now, just based on the amount of undecided voters. There were way more undecided. That's why, like Brian pointed out, Trump's numbers haven't really moved up, but Biden's have. And that's because Biden's really eaten up the undecided voters. And I think that Trump just pushed away so many undecided voters with the way he handled COVID-19. And then and mostly that, honestly, I think that's where he just fell off a cliff, was once he started his whole handling of COVID-19 from the beginning. Was there's a recent report that says that 210,000 deaths were likely avoidable if we just had proper lockdown policies in place, and like proper, social distancing policies enforced early on, and, just stringently. And that's how they managed to maintain the virus and keep the virus suppressed in China. And they've had such a good response to the virus in China, where only 5,000 people have died, even though they have 4 times our population in China. We've had, an order of magnitude higher people, exactly 40 times. So 40 times more, over 40 times more people have died in the US than in China. So and they have 4 times the population. So, we're doing 160 times worse than China right now per capita. So that's insane. That's terrible. And they handled it by being really serious, and, universal mask wearing, proper contact tracing. Now, there's some issues around contact tracing from a left perspective, I think, but I think that we can largely, people would agree that as long as it's you volunteer your information into like a database of some sort to be, contacted, or just it's seen as a community good that needs to be done. And so we agree as a community, yes, we will allow this thing to happen as a community if we vote on it, and people all agree to doing that. I think that we can see why it would benefit communities and keep us all safe if we did. But we should be careful about just handing over some person being able to hand over information, and make sure that information is protected in a way that says it cannot be used for any other means. And also recognize that, like, how could that be abused? I mean, contact tracing, and then you trace, if they can trace contacts like that, they might be able to trace and then find somebody is an undocumented person, through contact tracing, when they didn't give up their information willingly, but somebody had their information in their phone. Oh, they know him as so-and-so. They give their information over to these authorities, and those authorities hand them over to ICE. And so when we've seen agencies end up working with ICE, so we got to be really careful about, we can support things, but we got to be critical of them and try to look for where they could go wrong and avoid making those mistakes, so that we don't put real, marginalized people or anyone in harm's way. I love that Boston got a shout out during this, by the way. Ooh. for our COVID spike. And I wish we gotta have, we got to get Becca on here at some point, but yeah, to talk about the situation with teachers and in Boston. But because I didn't realize that Boston had moved to a 100% online.
It was like yesterday or the day before that, because the rate had went up to 5.4, I believe, which is ridiculous on its own, because someone else had pointed out recently that that's including places and towns and city places that don't have school children living there. So them having lower rates doesn't really make a difference or matter. But yeah, I mean, this has been a whole debacle. It has been a debacle. So for them to point to that as any type of good or any we definitely should do a segment on that soon, hopefully, because boy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening for some debate coverage. Please, if you're watching and you have not done so already, I'm going to ask that you please hit the like button, subscribe, and share this out far and wide. Please hit that subscribe button. Just do it right now, right now. Don't wait another second. Just hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this after, leave your thoughts in the comments below. You can always hit us up. You can find Kwame at Raised Fist Media on YouTube and also on Twitter at Raised Fist Media, all one word, and go find him, follow him, support him on Patreon as well, patreon.com/raisedfistmedia. And you can also support us here at Radical Democracy at patreon.com/radical democracy. Links are in the description box below. Sorry for not throwing a link to Raised Fist in there. My apologies. I'll try to remember to update that. But links to the Patreon for Radical Democracy in the description box below. You can sign up to either of our Patreons for as low as $1 a month, and you can also drop us a tip, one-time tip, no account required, coffee.com/radical democracy, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. Okay, so I know Kwame has to get out of here. I've held him up for about 3 hours now and do deeply appreciate all your time with us today. This was, I'm glad that I had somebody to rough it with me. Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh,
Misery loves company. So
I appreciate y'all having me as always. I love coming out here and chopping it up with y'all. Try to bring a little bit of comic relief and silliness to these very dire, sad, depressing, draining, awful times. I ran out of adjectives there. But thank you. You guys are the only reason I was able to make this through sanity intact. So I appreciate you all.
Dope. Yeah, same. So, thank you so much for being here. We will have you back on again soon. I am certain of it. We'll be doing some of our own, producing some of our own content, and you will be working on some content over on Raised Fist Media as well. Do you want to say anything about that before you go? Anything, tease anything, or are you working on anything in particular right now? Any specific reviews?
Just trying to plug away at those reviews that we can get going for you guys. I've also got some cool content planned with you, actually, for some cool gaming content coming up. We're both checking out this new game called Democracy 4, which is just like a political simulator in like the wildest of ways. So we'll be definitely covering that on the site, as well as Crusader Kings. So I know, a lot of you guys out there, even if you're lean more on the political side of things, I would definitely still recommend checking it out. I think it'll be pretty awesome.
And do you also have a fundraiser coming up too?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I am right now doing the Extra Life Foundation fundraiser. I believe I had mentioned it last time we did a video. But if you guys don't know, coming up on November 10th, I believe will be game day. I'll be doing my 24-hour gaming marathon. I thought it was 3. This is actually my 5th year doing it. Trying to raise 500 right now. It's looking good so far. I will make sure that when we update the links, we throw that extra life in there, or definitely check out Raised Fist Twitter. On there, I believe I tweeted it out, and support if you can. All of the money is going to the local children's hospital. So I'm doing it for Boston Children's Hospital.
Awesome. Love it. I don't know if you see that question down below. Feel free to respond to that question, or feel free to just skip town right now. Your choice. But I will give you a crack at that one if you feel compelled to.
Yes. Brian Dew says, any thoughts on AOC Alon Twitch streaming Among Us? I sadly missed it. Unfortunately, I did not get to check it out. I do want to go back and rewatch it. I'm sure that it will be an interesting time. I appreciate it. I feel like for the people who aren't inspired to vote, like AOC obviously has some idea of what's popular right now, trying to reach people where they are on things like Twitch. And I mean, AOC and Alon Omar both seem like they're actual gamers. So why not, right? If the people are going to be there, why not go to where they are? And, maybe everyone's tuning in to watch Among Us. It makes for good content to sit and watch. And if you can get a couple people to care about some views that you think are important, more power to you. One thing I will say as an aside, unpolitically related, I'm pissed at Ilhan Omar. Her PC rig, she tweeted it out recently, is absolutely way too nasty. She's got like an NVMe, she's got like one of the
I did
wildest.
not know that. That's so dope. I didn't think I could love her any more than I already
do. Her graphics card. Awesome. Guys, her graphics card is absolutely bonkers. I tweeted it out recently. Please go check it out. If you,
I will. I absolutely will be. That's so wild. Have you been playing Among Us, by the way? Quick, like just personal. Like, have you been playing Among Us at all? Or
I have not yet. That's another one that I'm toying with. I'll put it out to the people. We maybe should maybe get on that and see if our friendships can all survive the betrayals that naturally come from Among Us. But yeah.
We should try to do one. We should try to play and maybe do like a community Among Us. I would love to. If other folks are, anyone in our Patreon community, if y'all are playing Among Us, we should definitely get a game going at some point. Because I would love to play. I've only watched someone play it, but I haven't played it myself yet. So,
and my understanding is it is free on mobile with ads. So there's not really as much a financial barrier as some other games. So if you guys want to jump in there or you have some interest in it, I will definitely be down for that.
Tammy says we can do an Among Us Patreon tier benefit. LOL.
Who knows? Maybe we can.
We'll talk in the Discord server with it and see if folks are down. Definitely in our Discord server. We'll if you join our Patreon for as low as $5 a month, you'll get access to our Discord server. We'll give access to folks that are donating on Coffee too, like FL. If you want access to our Discord server, if you're watching this, I think FL was with us in the beginning. I don't know if FL is still here, or I think FL might have been here for my earlier stream. But FL, if you watch this after, if you want access to our Discord server, if anyone that donates on Coffee would like access, give us a shout and we'll give access to anyone that tips $5 or more. And that brings me to our next shout out, and thank you to Ian, What Up America, for tipping $5 on Coffee. Thank you so much, Ian. Ian comments, great job, keep it up. Thank you so much, Ian. We absolutely will with your support. So thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Dope. Love it. All right, let me let you go, Kwame, before yes, a big thank you. Ian Olsen, by the way, What Up America is the person who did the song for the show, the theme song for the show, for Radical Democracy. So that intro song that you hear at the beginning, and we usually play it at the end of our shows now, that's What Up America. So, that was an amazing contribution and really deeply appreciate that. Kwame is also a producer of music and a maker of music, a creator of music, I should say, rapper and DJ and everything, just everything musical. So
a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah. Kwame's actually a really nasty DJ, actually. So yes. All right. Let me let you go. Thank you so much for sticking with us.
Thanks, y'all.
And we will have you back on again soon.
Appreciate y'all.
All right. Peace. Oh, okay. Nice. All right. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us tonight. I will flip through if there's any last comments that I need to get to. Tammy, let me know. I'll get to any comments that we didn't get to with Kwame. If there's anything that folks still have lingering, I don't want to miss anything. Please let me know. I will, ask me anything. I'm glad to answer here. I'm still, I don't know that these debates, like, oh man, I can't wait till this election just happens and it's over, and then we can take steps forward to start figuring out what the hell's next, because I'm so sick of like this being the only thing. And like, at least once it's over, we can start to talk about like, what do we do from here? So I'm looking forward to the election for that reason. I think it's going to be a really long and dreadful election, unfortunately, because it's going to take, with the mail-in votes, it's just going to take much longer to, if it's a close election, if it's not if Biden doesn't easily secure the 270 or Trump for that matter, but if Biden doesn't easily secure the 270, if neither candidate secures the 270 early, then we could be talking about days later until the election's actually decided, until we get the final votes in for the mail-in tally. So we could seriously be talking about the election being undecided 3-4 days after the ballots, after the polls close. So that will be treacherous, but we will be there to cover it from pretty much beginning to end. We're going to be doing a ton of presidential election day coverage. I'm going to try really hard to get some guests on for that show. So because I want to do a longer show than normal, like a really long show, because it's going to be a long night and we're just in it for the long haul there. And so, yeah, I just want to do a lot of coverage. Big day, lots to talk about, lots to discuss. I think we'll all be like nervous all day long, just like waiting for the stuff to just finally be over. It's been a tumultuous 4 years, and people just want to get through this election and get it over with, and hopefully start to move forward. I think that we'll have a Biden presidency to look at and start to hopefully be critical of and push in whatever directions, but also start to look at what are our other strategies, what other realms are we working in to try to better the human condition on the left, because I don't think that 4 years under Biden is going to be. I think that we got a lot of liberal, allies of ours who are going to go to sleep. The brunch liberals are all going to go out to brunch, and they'll be out to brunch when we're in the streets. And so the numbers are going to thin out a bit, because there's not going to be the Trump outrage. And we're going to have to reconcile that and figure out what that means for the left. And honestly, I've seen a lot of analysis recently, and I do believe that the folks, Ben Burgess had a take on there was a recent debate between Chomsky and the Bad Faith podcast with I forget dude's name from Chapo Trap House, and Breonna Joy Gray are people running the podcast, and it's like right there. Virgil Texas, is that his real name? Virgil Texas, is that his real name? Last name Texas, is because that can't be real, right? Because he's like, doesn't he speak with like a British accent? His last name cannot really be Texas, but who I believe his name is Virgil Texas, and Breonna Joy Gray do a podcast called Bad Faith, and they debated Chomsky recently on the idea of like, should you vote green or not vote for Biden, or threaten to not vote, withhold your vote to try to push him on policy, or do you just hand over your vote to him, early on, and just promise your vote to him early, and even without any concessions for the left. And Ben Burgess weighed in on that and talked about, how, what this strategy is for voting in this election, and what that means for the left. Like, as far as the ability to say push a Biden left and that sort of issue. And I don't think that there's really room to push Biden left. I don't think that he's going to be doing much listening to the left once he's elected. Neither did Ben Burgess. And the thought is that we really need to start to win primaries. That's what Ben Burgess recommended. That's what he said. That's where the fight really is. And I think he's right. We got to start. The winning has to happen in primaries. We've already lost. We're not going to, the left has no leverage right now. The left has no leverage, and we just have to accept our position. It's not a great position. It's a shitty position to be in, but we lost. The left lost when Bernie Sanders lost for as far as electoral politics are concerned. And we need to just face up to that and recognize that, and then start to think about how we move forward now. And I think that that's what this next the conversation will be about post-election. And I really, really genuinely look forward to start to have those conversations, and hopefully start to have on some more guests and talk with some other folks from all around the left spectrum about some different approaches that we can take here on the left, and really start to talk about a solutions-based discussion. So, all right. I think it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much to everyone that stuck it out with us. Really appreciate y'all. I think that we are all through on comments. Please like, subscribe, share. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button. Just super quick, hit that like button, and also subscribe. Super simple. You don't have to get notifications. Just hit that bell. Turn off notifications if you don't want to receive notifications. Just go on your own time and check back in whenever you want to. Really appreciate everyone. Brian and What Up for the tips. Thank you so damn much, y'all. Appreciate the hell out of y'all. Just thank you. We're going to get Tammy a mic soon. So that's going to happen soon, because we have raised enough on coffee to get a mic. And so we will do that. I'm fighting back a sneeze right Okay. Woo. All right. I thought I could save that sneeze till after this, but it wasn't happening, y'all. Brian Dew says, I guess Trump said AOC +3 in the debate tonight, and Cory Bush jumped in on Twitter saying it's more than 3 now and it's growing. And she is absolutely right about that. And that's dope. And Trump's going to be gone. So luckily we ain't even have to worry about talking about Trump no more soon. We can start to focus on the terrible Biden administration instead. And I know I'm not going to make a whole lot of friends, a whole lot of liberal friends in the upcoming 4 years, but I think that we'll start to grow the left, and that's the real goal: is how do we grow the left and start to build power, and again start to win on the left. And that means, I think, winning in primaries. We got to get really serious about our primary strategy and hone in on that. And we'll talk more about that. We'll try to figure that out as we go and try to use this platform to help further the left cause, help push forward the left agenda. And that's the real goal of this. Build democracy in the workplace. That's our true goal here, is build democracy in the workplace and try to expand democracy from our political system into our economic system. And that's the real fundamental change that we need to make to begin to overthrow some of these systems of, oppression that they have in this country. So, all right. Yes, please, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate all of y'all. Really enjoyed the time tonight. Please come back again and join us again soon. I would love to see you all again soon. All right. So I think we're going to call it a night here. Last minute comments, feel free. I just need to check one thing real quick before we shut it down. But alrighty. I think we're ready to go here. All right, I'm gonna play us out with this with our song, our track from What Up America, aka Plasmon. Thank you so much, What Up, for working on this for us. It's dope. Love it. Let me play that out here. Un momento. Just gotta cue it on up. All right, folks. Thank you to everyone, and really big shout out to our Patreon community. Thank you for everything y'all do. Y'all are what keep the lights on around here. Give us all of our motivation to keep going. Really, truly, honestly, it's motivation. It's so motivational to know that folks support us like that and are willing to, give us a hard-earned dollar we do not take it for granted. It means so much to us, and we really, really deeply appreciate it. And it just keeps us going and keeps us going strong. So thank you so much to our entire Patreon community. We appreciate you so much. Miss all the folks that have had to take some time off recently from just everything. We miss you all and look forward to y'all all coming back. But yeah, really, really love this community that we have here. I really do. All right, let's hear this amazing track from Plasmon as we peace on out, y'all. All right, let me pull this on up.
People you talking about, they spent money on white women. They set up bars and they went playing pool and golf for $1,000 a hole, and they were known to make millions and millions when there wasn't no high taxes, and they were not hindered by white America. They were allowed to see the white America is completely and close all the doors on me. I'm not allowed to work in America, out of America. I was stopped right in my prime just when I started making money. So you can't compare me with nobody like Joe Lewis or nobody.
If you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is right to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
That other kind of socialism that revolutionizes the workplace, brings democracy to the workplace for the first time.
So that's one way. And then the other thing is, in my more optimistic days, he's such a perfect endpoint of everything that is toxic and dysfunctional about the United States, about capitalism, about the 80s, that maybe this is the final sort of disgusting burst before we evolve or change it to something better.
Talk about some things about why we need a new party. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of do this. Why do we need a new party? We need a new party because both parties suck.
What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization?